There's so much at stake right now. This really could be a historic moment. But let's get into kind of the nitty-gritty here on trade with Japan. What's the potential in terms of renegotiating what we've currently got with Japan, and how does that help us with China?
Well, I think that's something that the president has been focused on, not just since he ran for office, but really for decades. You go back to the 80s, he was talking about the need to negotiate better agreements with Japan. So the good thing is he's got a very good relationship with Shinzo Abe. They get along personally very well. And I think Abe really appreciates the United States now exercising more leadership in the Pacific region, because you see China on the march. You see that they're expanding their military capacity. Obviously, North Korea is a big problem. And so I think Japan appreciates that America's back in the game and we're leading again.
You know, TPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, got a really bad rep during the 2016 campaign, in part because Hillary Clinton had helped to negotiate it and was very much in favor of it. And it was seen as a real lightning rod, especially for people in the middle of the country and in manufacturing areas where they were worried about what it would mean for trade. That's all water under the bridge, though, now. And as we look forward to being able to exert as much pressure as we possibly can on China, in your view, Congressman, is there an opportunity for a TPP 2.0 or a Donald Trump kind of trade agreement that other countries would sign on to so that we can have more than just our own might when it comes to dealing with the likes of China?
He probably would prefer to do a bilateral agreement with Japan and then do similar agreements with other countries. I think that the president's been very skeptical of doing these big omnibus trade agreements. And TPP was a massive agreement. I think there was questions about whether that was truly respecting American sovereignty. But when you have Donald Trump sitting down with Shinzo Abe negotiating some mutually beneficial agreements, I think that could help us and our economy, and obviously could help Japan, and we can be a counterweight to China. But strengthening our economic relationships with the Pacific Rim, I think, is important. TPP was a flawed vehicle. Maybe Trump can find another way to make sure that the U.S. is there economically as well as militarily.
What about North Korea and all this? Again, huge opportunity. It's incredible, Congressman, because we're actually going to see the President of the United States sit down with the head of North Korea, something that hasn't ever happened before. And if they can actually succeed at some kind of denuclearization plan, it would be great for the U.S., it would be great for the world, and it would certainly be good for President Trump. Do you think that's in the cards?
I think it's in the cards. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but the Trump administration decided to stop ignoring this problem. Obama ignored it for 8 years. And then when Trump was getting ready to take office, Obama says, well, gee, Mr. President-elect, this is a big problem, North Korea. It's probably the biggest problem. Well, why didn't you do anything about it? So Trump, to his credit, took the bull by the horns. They've done a serious pressure campaign, economically, diplomatically, militarily. Trump himself upped the rhetoric, similar to like Reagan calling the Soviet Union the evil empire. He's been very blunt and direct with Kim.
Man thing in there too.
With Kim Jong-un. I think that's rattled Kim Jong-un. So the question's going to be, if Kim did not have this nuclear program, none of the things that Trump has done or his administration, would have been undertaken most likely. So it's the nuclear program that's causing his country to be a focus of unprecedented pressure. So does he make the judgment that this may be more trouble than it's worth? I don't think he thinks that right now, but other leaders have done that in the past, whether it was Gaddafi in Libya, South Africa. And if we can get to that point where he recognizes that his path forward, if he wants to remain in power, he needs an economic lifeline. He can't have the U.S. exerting this type of pressure on him. Maybe that causes him to be willing to cut a deal.
But, let's back up for a little bit, because, he hasn't been, how shall I say, helpful, for lack of a better word, to his people. He's been, in fact, very destructive to so many people there. So why are we willing, just so that they give up the nukes? I mean, why are we willing to say, okay, well, we'll get rid of some of these sanctions and help you up a little bit with your economy in exchange for denuclearization? I mean, it's probably going to be more than that, right?
Well, look, these are some of the decisions that you got to make. And if you think that those nuclear weapons pose a threat to the U.S. and to the region, you got to figure out how you can deal with that short of an all-out war. An all-out war in that area, I think, would be very deadly. I think it would cause a lot of casualties, a lot of allied casualties in places like South Korea. So you try to deal with it now. We saw the Obama administration try to do this with Iran, and they showed us what not to do, front load all these economic benefits, and then take promises that Iran's not going to develop a nuclear weapon in the future, even though those restrictions sunset and we don't have access to Iran's military sites. So I think what the president's going to insist on is upfront denuclearization, and that's the pathway where they could have reduction of economic sanctions. That shouldn't mean that we condone the regime, because it's a brutal regime. It's a failed communist, Stalinist ideology, and it's basically being used to oppress people and keep Kim Jong-un in power. It's bad.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, and I hear your point. We got to, I guess, first deal with task at hand, which is the denuclearization issue, and then maybe later on we can think about their style. Though, dare I say that, because I think his biggest fear, Congressman, is that he becomes just like Gaddafi, right? And as soon as you lose the nuclear capability, there goes all your power. So I'm sure that this administration is doing what it can to assure him that that's not actually the case.